with other chefs. They live by trading secrets with chefs. This is a community of practice. For a long time, communities of practice were thought to be accidental. They just, came together and they grew like truffles. Now, truffles, as you're aware, grow in the wild. They can't be cultivated. You take out your trained dog or your trained pig and have them sniff around the roots of oak trees, and when they find something, boy, they dig like crazy, and you grab it before they can eat it. And truffle farming is sort of like playing roulette. Well, we found that communities actually are even closer to truffles, because now a third of the world's truffles are grown on one truffle plantation in Spain, and now more than half of the Fortune 500, in fact, I'd say 90% of the Fortune 500 companies use communities of practice, a lot of which they have created for themselves. By bringing together interest groups to have conversation, sort of approve and make up the new rules and bring along the apprentices. I'll only talk a little about technology. A wiki is a wonderful way to support a community of practice, but you can do them without getting into wikis and stuff like that. Almost all of these things, technology can be a great enabler, enhancer, leverage, but it's not really required, because we're talking about human things. Now, how did it come that we had this oddball 80-20 situation, or putting most of the money where it will do the least good? I think part of it is that we've forgotten about the needs of different sorts of learners. Formal learning is great for novices because they need a framework, they need a vocabulary, they need a place to pigeonhole information. It's sort of like riding on a bus. They're all there together. They're going the same speed. They'll arrive at about the same destination. It's scheduled. If you're hungry, well, tough, because we're not stopping at a restaurant just for you. So bus rides are a bit rigid, but they're great if you're new in town. Now, on the other extreme, we have informal learning. And informal learning is more like riding a bicycle. I choose my own destination. If I'm hungry, I stop at a restaurant. If I want to change direction, I do that. When I'm tired, I stop. When I see somebody by the side of the road, a fellow cyclist, I stop and help them out. And this is the sort of learning that the more experienced worker benefits from, because it's filling the holes in the learning tapestry. It's just what I need to know. Don't give me a course on it. It's very practical stuff. It's very, very important, because usually the people who are able to take bus rides or bike rides are those who are the primo producers of value in the company. I mean, they're the people with experience. So we ought to be trying to make it real easy for them to take bike rides, and easy to find information and find the right people and learn things with pictures, whatever it takes. But instead, we usually don't pay attention to the bike rides at all. And training departments are very good at setting out bus routes and driving buses, and therefore most of the effort seems to be spent on novices or new things rather than proving what's there and sort of keeping up with the times. I think there are ways we can change that balance. Let me look at my notes one more time, or my mind map. Notes are so linear. I hate just straight notes anymore. And I also find it presumptuous that you'd want to follow my regular train of logic anyway. When I talk about getting out of learner's way, and I talk about things that aren't scheduled, so you can't just clock them in and clock them out, and make sure that people can pass tests and that sort of thing. A lot of people find this horrifying. And yet, they don't if they trust their workers. For a long time, we felt that we're still in the industrial age and sort of had to keep track of somebody and make sure that they were doing things so we can actually look at their output. Unlike with a knowledge worker, where most of the output is not visible, or at least not easily measured. But we don't trust people. And it's sort of like the founder of Wikipedia, Jimmy Wales, gives an example of trust, because Wikipedia, people go in and they make their own entries, and they're not all experts. It's the wisdom of crowds rather than the wisdom of one person. And people say, well, how can you trust people to do that? You know, aren't you dealing with screwy stuff all the time? And Jimmy goes, no. It's like if you're planning a restaurant. Oh, let's plan a restaurant in a pub. And naturally, we're going to serve steak and chops. And because we're going to do that, we're going to have sharp knives on the table. And we know that knives are things that people stab one another with. I mean, knives are dangerous weapons. People die because of knife fights all the time. So we'll put the diners in cages where they can't get at one another with those steak knives and cause... Well, no, that's not right. We will trust the people not to stab one another with the steak knife. So don't need the cages. Well, it's the same thing with lots of community efforts on the internet and in electronic systems, that you find out that most people are very good-hearted. That's their nature. They don't need to be put in jails, and in fact, they thrive if they're trusted and challenged to do things that are of their own choosing, but get the job done. It's like, you know, you've seen the puzzles where they're the little dots and you connect the dots and that type of thing. Knowledge workers want the dots. You know, here's the mission. But they want to connect the dots themselves rather than have someone else tell them what the connections are. Let me wrap up with 3 quick stories. One is a story from the campus of Harvard University, where Ellen Langer, a professor of psychology and education, handed out a paper on urban sociology to a group of students saying, here, read this, you're going to be tested. She handed out the same paper to a control group of students, perfectly matched, gave them the same paper saying, read this, you're going to be tested. Oh, by the way, some of this might be controversial. How do you think the test scores looked? Well, the group that was told it might be controversial scored higher. They remembered more. Why? Because uncertainty engages the mind. Next time you're ready to pay a fortune for some really slick piece of training video or something, remember, uncertainty